God of peace be with you. Trying something new again today, so that you just have an image to look at, rather than me down in the corner. So I'm out the back today, trying to keep the technology under control, which doesn't quite seem to be behaving itself. All right, well, you might now be looking at this afterwards, because the streaming doesn't seem to want to work this afternoon, but that's okay. It will be recorded for you to look at later. So for our reflection this evening, it's one of those passages that are a little confronting, because it makes you put yourself into the various positions, the various characters in the story, which comes from Matthew chapter 21. Verses 23 to 32. It's okay if you're putting yourself in the story of the powerless, but more uncomfortable if you put yourself in the place of the powerful. Often, Jesus tells his story in this way, particularly when those who were seen to have power or authority chose to test Jesus' authority out. What would often happen is that they would ask straight out, what gives you the right to do this particular thing? And Jesus would nearly always answer with a question. Sometimes with a story, and then he would suggest that the ones with true power were in fact neither the people arguing with him or challenging him, or himself, though clearly that's why they were challenging him, because he had it. But Jesus would see the power as being with those who were traditionally considered to have no power. And these were particularly people whose society saw as having done the wrong thing. And yet Jesus said they were the ones who were reaching the place of power, the place of love, the place of hope, ahead of the others who believed it to be their right. And they did that simply by being honest about that which they had done wrong and seeking a new direction. That's where Jesus saw the true power. Now, the challenging question for us is, which group are we in? And when we've identified that group, what is our response to be? If we identify ourselves as being in the group of the powerless, then the challenge is to take up our power. That it turns out that we are much more powerful than those around us see us as. And their effect on us does not count. However, if we are, if you like, humble enough to admit that we are, in fact, people whom our society has given power to by the accident of our birth or by a particular interpretation of merit to do with those things that happen to be given merit at that time in our society, if we're humble enough to admit that we have power that is given to us, are we prepared to give it away? Because it would appear that the only place of true power is, in fact, the place of weakness, the place of, more appropriately, vulnerability. Those with authority and power seldom show vulnerability. But that's the point at which you are able to say, yes, I will travel a new way. Without that vulnerability, you'll never say yes, because one will always want to appear strong, and yet the true strength is not to be found there. In fact, that sort of strength cuts one off from true connection and true response. So, which are we? The powerless, able to take up power, or the powerful, being called to let it go? Ironically, both calls are to take up our own power. The power of choice. To choose not to judge but to forgive. To choose not to resent but to love. To choose to admit our own inadequacies, but not let them stop us from turning around and going forward. Not to cover them up with pretenses of power. So for the meditation, you can, of course, just be still, or use the words, I am powerful. You might be able to come up with a better one. Perhaps we'll make it, I am powerful. When I admit my vulnerability. Something like that. Regardless, spend this time being aware that you have the power of choice, the power to choose. And the God of peace be with you.